funny. It's an interesting way you put it, because I don't really see it the same way in terms of me. The sort of implication is that somehow I come from some higher brow kind of thing, coming to a medium which is sort of lower brow, and I don't regard it in that way at all. The comics are unbelievably sophisticated, created by intelligent, very creative people who choose to work in a particular medium, where the big challenge is actually to reduce and make things simple. And when I say simple, I think that's the hardest thing to do. I don't mean simplistic, but simple, be rich, be layered, and be economic. Now, I've always wanted to do that, and when it comes to Shakespeare, one of the great populists of our time, a guy who wrote plays. If his plays weren't working, they were off the next week. So it's almost as if he were writing comic books, it would be that title doesn't work. I've listened to terrible feedback. That's So I think it's not so different. When I arrived about 2 years ago, there had been about 4 or 5 years of development in which some excellent scripts had emerged. Some that stayed entirely on Viking Earth, some that stayed entirely in the world of the gods, and some of the other exotic worlds that the comics have. I was convinced that we needed to be in contemporary Earth in order to address the origin story, and in order to be able to make a contemporary audience understand how how we can kind of accept the idea of these kinds of creatures coming to Earth. The current JMS run of Thor, maybe it's not so current now, but tackles that in an interesting way and was inspiring in that way. It was just an instinct that we should have a contemporary element that would root us, anchor us, and then we would just try and pile things in, reduce, make simple, pile things in, reduce, make simple, and eventually try and come up with something that isn't just trying to tick the boxes, but gets as much in as possible. I think, you start, I looked at, I've read and read a gazillion copies of Thor. There's the Norse myths, pulled out anything I thought was an interesting incident about, whatever it is, giving up his eye or whatever, classic stories from the comics, and then see, well, okay, what do we think works, and what can be in some way in there that isn't too packed. I think a temptation is throw everything. They like that. That's a favourite one. Put this one in, and then suddenly you haven't got that backbone. We were looking for a backbone. The backbone, in a way, is the story of exile and return. It's a prodigal son story against which a lot of other things can hang. You're always taking a chance. You knew that you had very specific challenges. You've got to be a big guy. You've got to be prepared to do all that hard work working out. He's got to, and yet we put a lot of faith into the passionate relationship between him and Jane Foster in this. So he needed to have that. Needed to be able to listen as well. It couldn't just be. I didn't want him to be just that, even though maybe the story in parts he is, but he has a real character arc to go to. So you needed somebody who was ready for that journey, ready to do all of that, was excited about doing a chewy acting scene as he was about doing a fantastic action moment, and he was up for that for sure.
You come onto something that has a pre-existing sort of fan base for many years, and people know more about your character than you will, which you don't usually do as an actor. You create it, and it's yours. So you want to, make sure you pay homage to those guys or respect to the original stuff, but also introduce it to a new audience, in the right way. So, there's a lot of elements that, pressures and what have you, but you've got to, you put that aside and just day by day work on, what are we doing in this scene? It was a nerve-wracking experience being on that stage, and then that was the first bit of footage I'd seen, and I felt like a fan sitting there watching this thing come to life, and and then it got a great response. So I couldn't have been happier. I mean, the Old English speak, the Shakespearean way of speaking, I don't even understand. I look at something with Ken at one point, and he went through line by line what it was actually saying, and we don't go that far into this. We have it's sort of. It's certainly proper, but we don't go quite into the Shakespearean way of speaking. Hopefully it doesn't sound funny. In the trailer we showed just then, there was the Frost Giants, which are certainly big ice monsters. Huge battle there. There's a few. There's Thor as a god, throughout the 9 realms fighting monsters, and then there's Thor on Earth as a human fighting humans. So it was nice to kind of figure out what were the two fighting styles and how strong is he here and weak here, and Ken's one of the people I've never been challenged so much with changing things, doing it different. Okay, we got that, now try this, and it really gets you out of that sort of bad habit of saying, oh no, my character only does this. And I think it's, when you limit yourself like that, you limit possibilities. And Ken was all about experimenting and just going for it and taking that risk. And it works sometimes it doesn't. And, that's part of the journey.
Well, it's certainly the hugest thing I've ever been a part of, in pretty much every single way. I mean, I've worked with amazing people, but I really idolized Kenneth Branagh for a really, really long time, so it was pretty crazy to actually be able to work with him. I mean, we had a table, and Anthony Hopkins was, what? I mean, the caliber of actors in this movie, including Miss Portman, it's just pretty much a dream for me, and the most exciting thing I've gotten in. I mean, in a different way than I've been excited about other things. Just stars in my eyes kind of way.
Yes. It was like a great gift that we got to work together. I mean, it was really, really
That was nice.
lucky. It made everything so, I mean, it was a fun movie to begin with, and then it made it like, it amplified the fun by a million.
I remember your text when cause someone asked me, they were like, so your friendship with Natalie Portman clearly got you this film. Like, I'm like, Natalie Portman had no idea I got this.
I was like, you would want to do this? That's the coolest thing ever. I was like, when they told me that they cast Kat, I was like, you got Kat? That's so cool. Like, it's just, it was amazing. It was really fun.
It's really been a kind of an incredible experience, just because it was really a couple of scenes in Jon Favreau's Iron Man movie, which everybody was wondering if it was even going to work out.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, I had all this fun stuff to do, and I'd gone from being this kind of pest of a suit, bothering Tony Stark for an interview, to Nick Fury's right-hand man at S.H.I.E.L.D., which again, I was like, okay, kill me now. That's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And then every time I do another one, they just unveil more of the guy, and kind of, to me, and then to kind of go there today, and I was hoping, I'm not going to lie, I was hoping, but to have Joss Whedon, who I'm a huge fan of, kind of say, hey, listen, we're hoping you're going to be in Avengers. I was like, well, let me check my schedule, bro. There was one leap over a banister in Iron Man that I nearly killed myself doing. But they're finally ready to trust me with a little bit of that stuff again. But I actually really dig it also because everybody else is super. And Agent Coulson, I feel like he's kind of us. You know what I mean? I feel like they could have pulled him out of Hall H, and then trained him as a ninja for a while. But then, every single one of these movies so far, you get a little bit more information about who S.H.I.E.L.D. is and what they might be on about. And definitely it becomes clearer in here, that S.H.I.E.L.D. is an organization that, if not its main focus, one of its main focuses is dealing with anybody or anything that shows up on Earth that is either potentially superheroish or supervillainish.
I think that you can look at it both ways. I mean, I think there is a deeply unhealthy anarchistic element in his psyche, which is definitely damnable in the court of law, I would say. But definitely misunderstood. I tried very hard in preparation to think about rooting the chaos and the mischief in a psychological, a very truthful psychological trope. And I think it comes from the fact that he's the younger brother. He's not the favoured son. He won't be the president. He'll always be the vice president. He has less responsibility. He'll never inherit the throne. And I think it becomes a competition between two brothers for their father's love and acceptance. And because Thor is a chip off the old block in terms of he's much more like Odin, I think that Thor is easier to love for Odin than Loki. Loki is inclined to his powers of intellect. He's inclined to the dark arts and magic and sorcery. And I think Odin doesn't really understand any of that. And then through the course of the film, you come to understand the truth of Loki's parenthood, who his parents were, and then I think the villainy, if I can say that, comes from betrayal, rejection, loneliness. doesn't belong anywhere. He doesn't belong in this family. He was never a part of this family, and it's the pain of someone who's hurt and has no one who's really giving him any validation as an entity. So I think there's both those two things. There's someone who loves to start a fire and listen to the screams, and someone who's also trying to find acceptance in his own heart. He certainly turns up in places where you don't expect him. So he does have the power of like coming out of the shadows and surprising you. But there's also a physical aspect as well. I think everybody wanted to see Loki and Thor bash the 10 bells of crap out of each other, and I think they get that. And that definitively happens. And Chris and I had a huge 5-page fight at the end of the film, which was grueling to do, but really fun at the same time. Certainly, I can tell you that in the comics, he's the reason they all get together. I see Loki as like this kind of cosmic puppet master. Like if there's bad shit going down in the universe, Loki's probably pulling the strings. Without revealing too much, I would say that's a central premise in the film. Loki's relationship to the frost giants discuss